afternoon, everyone. Welcome today for our lovely talk. I thought I was prepped, but... So my name is Gandhi. I'm from a B2B tech PR agency called DUET London. I have next to me Liz Baines, head of planning from Specsavers. Really excited about this. But before we just kick off with this talk, I need to describe what I look like. So Liz, could I please ask you to do the same, just following me, if that's okay? So I have shoulder-length brown-white hair. I'm wearing a blue Punjabi suit, bright pink trousers, and a bright orange chunni, which is like a scarf for Punjabis. And I am Punjabi.
I am wearing also a bright pink outfit. I've also got brown hair with lots of grey on the sides. I'm 5'10". About it.
Great, wonderful. Yes, thank you so much. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you had a big journey in, didn't you?
A short flight, but yeah, a flight nonetheless.
So should have gone to Specsavers has really seeped into our common vernacular. You know, everyone knows that, doesn't it? Everyone in here knows what should have gone. Yeah, see, look at all those heads nodding. And it's a real, it's a social consciousness for us, which is so rare to do with a brand. You really did a very good job with that, with the team.
Yeah, maybe not me, personally.
Yes, of course. What we want to find out is how over the last 40 years you've been able to do this. And also the tagline should have gone to Specsavers. Does anyone know how old it is? Any guesses? Shout a number, anyone? No?
15 years.
Very close. 22 years old. 22 years old. That's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. So, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us, firstly, a bit about your background? Because head of planning, creative, people will want to kind of know what that means. Could you just take us through your journey and what that actually all entails?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm from the northwest of England. I'm from Preston, for those of you who know it. Definitely growing up, planning, creative advertising was just not something at all on my radar. I went to uni and then I was waitressing actually. And basically the guy who owned the pub that I waitressed at used to work in advertising and said to me, Liz, you kind of need to get a real job. It's great that you're here, but you're actually a bit of a shit waitress. What are you thinking of doing? And I was like, I'm just not sure. I studied biochemistry at uni. I've got no bloody idea where that would take me. And actually, he was like, go and try and get yourself some work experience in an ad agency. And this is back in 2005, so almost 20 years ago. But I did that. I got some work experience at an agency in Manchester and just fell in love with the industry. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like what my place was going to be in the industry. I just loved I loved what people were doing. I loved the focus on people and on changing behavior and on culture. And so I applied to some graduate schemes at that time and was lucky enough to get onto a graduate scheme at TBWA, where I actually then stayed for the first 10 years of my career. I worked in various different TBWA group agencies, so across digital agencies, CRM agencies. And after about 4 years, I kind of found the planning department and realized that was where I wanted to call home. And so I started my career in planning about 4 or 5 years into that. For the last kind of 10 years of my career, I was at an agency called WCRS, which was then called Engine, where I was the head of planning for the last few years before taking up this role for Specsavers, who have their own in-house creative team, so we don't use kind of an external agency.
That's fascinating. I mean, you went from London to Guernsey. That's where you're based now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So I was working for Engine, who were based on Great Portland Street up in London. I was actually living in Holborn. For those of you who know London, that's really right in the centre, of town. My husband also works in advertising, so we were both, we had 2 kids. We were kind of looking for something a bit different, for a new challenge, and also for a bit of a new lifestyle. We felt like after 20 years for me, more like 35 for him, we'd kind of, we were looking for the next move, and actually I got approached for this job at Specsavers, and I thought, Specsavers, wow. I mean, I've used Specsavers as a case study for so many years with clients when I'm trying to get them to realize that there's power in consistency and maybe we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
How amazing, maybe I could go and work there. And then actually the recruiter said to me, there's a bit of a kind of caveat with this role. It's based on the island of Guernsey. And I was like, I've got no idea where that is. I mean, so Guernsey is an island that's 6 miles by 5 miles in the middle of the English Channel, closer to France than England. Yeah. But actually we thought, at the time, sod it, it will change. It will, change is always a good thing, and this will be an adventure. So we packed up sticks and moved over to Guernsey, which is where we now live.
So brave, so wonderful. What a brilliant country to be in, or island to be on, actually. So just for the young creatives out there, I really want to get a little bit deeper on your role and what a head of planning actually entails. So can we just go through that a bit more? Because there's something you said to me earlier. You said, I like being nosy. And I love learning, which is why I'm a head of planning. And I was like, okay, let's talk. Let's take us through it.
Sure. So planning in an agency is all about taking a business problem, a marketing problem, and really looking at that creatively and really helping to understand how can you use every tool in your kind of creative armory to make change happen in the real world. I know real world's a bit of a kind of weird phrase, isn't it? But I mean, outside of PowerPoint slides and outside of your office and your business, how can you affect and create some kind of change in people and in people's hearts and in people's minds and in people's behaviors? So you take that, problem that's probably articulated as, we have to increase penetration of X by Y. No one wants to do that because of Z. And you actually start to think about what's happening in culture, what's happening in the lives of these actual people at the heart of this problem, what's happening in their minds. And so actually, this is what I get so excited because I think it's the best job in the world. On one hand, you're thinking really about psychology, about kind of behavior change. What's the kind of psychology behind all of this? But then you're thinking about the macro context, what's happening in their homes, what's happening in the world that's impacting those day-to-day decisions. And then you turn that into a strategy and ultimately into a creative brief that you will then give to creative teams who will create something from that strategy that then will live and breathe in the world and hopefully bring about this change that you've kind of identified and kind of birthed, fostered.
You said something interesting earlier, as you said, you shepherd them along and make sure that creative change is being consistently and clearly delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, kind of decades ago, it used to be very much a kind of baton passing process. The creative process was like a client to a planner to a creative to a designer. It's just not like that anymore at all. And I actually started my career in digital agencies and in social agencies. It's really never been like that in that world. It's been much more of a team sport. And that's what I absolutely, I love that kind of team sport vibe. And I think as you're all bringing your specialism and your knowledge to the table, until that thing is out there in the real world, I don't deliver a creative brief to a team and then I'm gone. Your role is to kind of make sure as that thing starts to become reality, is it still doing the thing that you set out for it to do in the first instance?
That's fascinating. It sounds really, really busy, and it does sound like you love it. So thank you so much for giving us that description. So we're really, really keen to hear a bit more about Specsavers and your role there, because you've been there now for about 2.5 years, you said?
Yeah, that's right.
Incredible. Can you give us a brief history?
Yeah, let me get my clicker out. So Specsavers. Specsavers was actually founded 40 years ago, so back in 1984. It's our 40th birthday this year. I wish it was mine again. And it was founded by this couple, Doug and Dame Mary Perkins, on their ping pong table in their house when they had moved back to Guernsey after studying optometry at university. They'd met at university and they moved back to Guernsey actually to care for Mary's parents. And it was there that they founded Specsavers. And what is amazing about Specsavers is it was really founded with a purpose, like, at its heart. And it was founded, this is before purpose was purpose, before it was called purpose. And that was to make quality eye care affordable and accessible to all. And I think actually for those of us living in Great Britain right now, that kind of sounds a bit like, well, that's a bit of a kind of easy purpose. There's no barriers to me that maybe you can immediately think of. But back in 1984, it was really different context. Like, eye tests cost a lot of money. The frames that you could get on the NHS were rubbish. You could choose between like 7 frames that all looked absolutely awful. And so really this was quite groundbreaking at the time and really still drives the business. So I think we'll go on to talk a little bit more about some of those places where actually we are still having to overcome barriers of affordability or accessibility. But outside of the UK, we just launched in Canada 2 years ago. And there you're still paying like $350 for an eye test. It's bonkers. It's people can't afford that, and they shouldn't have to. But actually, when it's been a kind of monopoly of people who've not had this as their purpose, then that's just how it is, and customers are kind of losing out. And so we go into those markets and we kind of really democratize them for customers. So the kind of core way that Mary and Doug delivered this is through something called the joint venture partnership. Yeah. So what they did is they realized that you can't just open an optician and then you live on Guernsey and actually have no day-to-day kind of skin in the game in that store, because actually it's a really sensitive topic. You need people looking after your patients who really care. And so actually what this joint venture partnership did is that it meant that in every single Specsavers store, there's an optometrist or an audiologist or retail partner in that store who owns that store, and therefore they've got skin in the game, and therefore they know their customers, they can personally care for their customers, however big Specsavers gets. And actually now in 2024, we've got 43,000 of those store partners. We're in 13 countries, and we've got 43 million customers. Wow. But each one of those customers really receiving that kind of personalized, kind of local care. Which is, it's fantastic.
That's an incredible amount of partners and customers. Did anyone think you had that many customers,
I certainly didn't before I started.
I'm astounded. I'm actually speechless, which is very rare for me. So you have some incredible adverts that you'd like to show us as well. Could we have a look at those?
Yeah, I thought the first ad, I would show you guys is actually the first TV ad that Specsavers ever did. And I want to show you this for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, I think it's a bit, without wanting to get too I don't know about it, it's a bit of a lesson to us all, because it's not polished, it's not the production values that we might expect now, but it's really authentic, and it's got something in it to me that is so true of Specsavers at their very core. So that's one reason I think it's almost a lesson to us in our careers. You just got to just start and just try, and I think Mary and Doug actually wrote this one. Oh, wow. The reason I wanted to show you is that it's got humour in it, and that's one of the things that Jazz and I wanted to talk about today, just using humour actually in those kind of difficult topics with stigma in. So I'll just show it to you.
It's important to get your eyes tested regularly by professionals, and at Specsavers they're friendly and extremely good value for money. And just look at this. When you choose one pair of glasses from hundreds of special frame styles, Specsavers will give you a second pair to the same prescription absolutely free if yours are standard single vision lenses. And it only costs £10 more to have your second pair tinted. And it's worth it. Remember, buy one pair, walk out with two.
I reckon I've seen a few people in that shirt in Margate today, actually.
That shirt is very bright. It's beautiful, actually. You know, the complexity of what Specsavers is doing, the very sensitive issues that you deal with, it's something that we can resonate with. You are essentially a healthcare brand. People don't know that. Like, they just know should have gone to Specsavers and use it as a joke, you know, when it is in their lexicon in everyday life. But how has humour helped build the brand?
I think it's interesting because that ad is from probably 38 years ago. And Specsavers have really remained quite resolute over that time of using humour, even when it's kind of gone in and out of fashion. And there's a Roosevelt quote that I read somewhere the other day, actually, that said, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that's one of the really special things about Specsavers, is that it's probably partly because they're on Guernsey. It's probably partly because they're privately owned and run. It's probably partly because we have our in-house creative who create most of our work. But they kind of focus on themselves and don't focus on the new fashion or the new fad or the new trend. It's just, what is the right thing for you to do? What's working for you? And they've continued to do that over this is a graph that I saw that came out after Cannes, which just shows the kind of decline in humour. And I think there was it was from System 1, who are a research agency. I think Orlando Wood was here earlier today or yesterday actually talking, so he works at System 1, and they were saying it's good news that it's stabilised, there's a bit more humour, but it's still nothing like it used to be. And I think that, actually, this is a picture of the very first Specsavers store. Yeah. And what I love about this is that bit in the top right-hand corner there, specs to be seen in. So it's not like absolute lols, is it? But it's just starting to go, actually, do you know what? We often talk in our industry about purpose, and we talk about humour, and we talk about them as if they're like opposites. You can't have both. You choose. You either have purpose, so you're doing something good, or you have humour. And I think right from the very beginning, Specsavers were really clear that they had a purpose that they wanted to deliver. And right from the beginning, they kind of understood that actually, if you are going to be purposeful, if you have a bigger mission, a just cause, as Simon Sinek talks about, you actually need to form connections with people, because actually nothing great is achieved alone, right? You need to bring people in with you, whether they're people who you want to support your just cause by working with you, or by donating, or by just simply purchasing your product. You have to join them in, and actually there's lots of research that shows that humour has a unique power to connect people. So actually, rather than almost talking about humour and purpose as two opposite things, it's almost like counterintuitive that you would be very serious and worthy about purpose, because actually being very serious and worthy, it's much more likely that that's going to make people feel like they can't connect with you, and that actually, they want to remain at a distance. But if you're trying to do something, you need to do the opposite. So I think right here, back when Mary and Doug founded their first store, they had an understanding of that. They're not in the ad industry, and this was probably not a conversation back in 1984, but they kind of understood that actually you've got to have some levity where appropriate to start to kind of get those shared connections and those shared
It's an emotional journey.
100%.
Healthcare is emotional.
100%.
And when you're thinking about your eyesight or your hearing, it's something that you feel a little bit ashamed sometimes to talk about. No one wants to talk about, losing their sight or losing their hearing as they get older. And when you're young and it's happening, it's even more sensitive. So humour has been the glue to what we're going to talk about next.
Definitely.
The tagline, right?
Yeah. So this was, we obviously, as you said, we, should have has been around for 22 years, Specsavers for 40. So it's not always been that we've used should have. Though we have always used humour. I took some photos, so that's why they look a bit rubbish, but they're from the office walls, just to show I love this. We've always used puns. Again, like puns are something that people are really kind of like, oh no, we wouldn't do a pun. But this is an ad from the late 80s. I don't know if you can see it actually, or if I'm in the way, but it says, I care, so do I. And that was really trying to get this kind of like eye health message out there. But yeah, I love it. And then some kind of refereeing there with our founders. And then down at that bottom right, we look forward to seeing you, seeing us. There's a bit of Alan Partridge in there somewhere, isn't there? He probably read some of our advertising. And then in 2003, we first kind of came up with should've, and that's that, you know, there's lots of humor outside of should've, but definitely should've is the thing that people associate so much with Specsavers now, and even people who actually don't use us and actually say that they would never get their glasses from Specsavers still love the advertising.
Yeah. I mean, this is by a team that works in-house.
Yeah.
You know, you're not using big London agencies. You're an in-house team with experienced people all working together. What is the secret sauce? Like, how do you keep this going? Because 22 years and it's still banging.
I love that. I think one of the things about Specsavers that I just absolutely love, I sound like I love everything. I actually really don't. I don't, but I do love planning and I do love Specsavers. One of the things that I loved when I started working at Specsavers is that there's no like pretension at all at Specsavers. Like,
well, you said about Mary and Doug joining the queue, and
oh yeah, our founders,
you know.
Mary, obviously they're billionaires, but they just eat in the cafe alongside everyone else. They queue. You know, it's so. Yeah, there's just no pretension in the business. And I think that has really actually helped us foster this creative idea for such a long time, because as I said before, there's kind of no like, I'm going to chase something that feels en vogue or, you know, it's just actually we'll just keep doing what's right for the business.
So you're not chasing those sexy signals, that's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely not. Not at work, anyway. I think the other thing is that we do our creative in-house, and we have built really intentionally a department that is full of legacy. So our creative director has been with Specsavers for 27 years. But also, we fill it with people like me who have 15, 20 years more experience working in ad agencies, different types of agency in London. And there's no kind of hierarchy in that relationship. One is not better than the other. They're just different. And actually bringing those two experiences together, we think is what allows us to keep consistent but keep fresh. And isn't that kind of one of the key tenets of long-term brand building? It's got to be consistently consistent. It's got to be consistently fresh.
Yeah. We talked about brands doing being more content-driven, especially adverts. They need to be more content-based now. Would you say that's true of Specsavers?
I think as an industry, we're like magpies.
Yes.
So it's always not always. Sometimes it's what's different, not what's right. And I think that's another thing that I found really refreshing about being at Specsavers. In the creative department, we're not a profit-making center. The way the joint venture partnership works is we are using our partners' money to create the work, the marketing, the advertising. So it's always for us about what is the right thing for our brand. We're not chasing an award. We're not trying to get a new skill set that we might be able to sell to clients that is, you know, that clients are going, what's this new thing? It's just all about what's right. And I think for a brand like Specsavers, with 55% market share in most of the countries that it's in and 43 million customers, actually, yes, of course, we are always looking at new media, and media is always changing, and technology is always changing. We have an AI task force. We work with external partners in social and in PR to make sure that we're tapping into all of the latest kind of things there. But AV is going to have a huge role for us because we need that reach. We're such a huge brand. And I'm not saying it's just telly in Coronation Street. Of course I'm not. I'm saying that there's a scale to AV on TV, on BVOD, on social, but there's also a power to tell emotional stories. And when I say emotional, I mean humorous and warm and real and of the people that actually you struggle to do with other types of media.
So Specsavers basically you've got this amazing team. Specsavers has a team called Specsavers Creative, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And then you mix it up with people like you coming in, and you have people that have been 26 years. It's unheard of in a creative agency. I mean, London, and you're based in Guernsey. You're not even London-based. It's incredible, and it works.
And we don't all live on Guernsey. No. So we've got about 2/3 of our department who live on Guernsey, and then we've got about 1/3 who are remote.
That's incredible. So, should we do something fun?
Yeah, always.
Want to talk about how you've kept Specsavers, should have gone to Specsavers, energized, fresh. Let's deep dive into some of those adverts.
Sure.
Are you all excited about this bit? I'm
Can
really
you actually
excited.
hear them? They sound a bit weird on stage, but maybe you can
they?
hear them over there. Are they okay? There's not a lot of narrative in them anyway, it's fine. Not a lot of VO. So the first thing to say, I think, before we talk about re-energizing should have, is that, and I've touched on this, just like familiarity is your friend. Familiarity, especially for us in healthcare, right? Familiarity is the key driver of trust. And all brands are looking for trust in some way, shape, or form. I think for us in healthcare, it's more important than other categories, perhaps, but everyone's looking for it. And so again, I kind of think when brands are thinking about what next, it's weird because I think often brands are like, what should we do now? We need to help drive trust. It's like, well, maybe do what people already know you for, and maybe be authentic and consistent in the way that you communicate them. Don't just come up with a whole new platform. So I'm going to show, I've got a few different ads to show. I think the first point that I wanted to make on how you can kind of keep something fresh but keep re-energizing it is just about being on a journey and being on a journey that you enjoy. I think that, and I think this applies to our careers as much as it does building brands. Sometimes there's a, like a pressure to be kind of right or wrong. You have to pick your side, and then you have to fight for it and package that all up and sell it as if there's no other answer. And I think that's really true when you start in your career. Everyone's like, well, why did you choose that thing? Why are you doing that? Why did you choose that? And you feel a bit like, I need to make the right decision, and then I need to stick with that decision. And as I told you, personally, that's totally not how I got into this industry and this role that I absolutely adore. It's through loads of kind of serendipity and chances and just keeping kind of the door open, I guess. And I think that's the same with building brands. So I think a lot of people probably imagine that should have gone to Specsavers was born in some big pitch meeting with 50 slides and lots of data and mood films and manifestos, and certainly that's the way of my life prior to joining Specsavers. But actually the first should have gone was this really quite cringy ad. I'll just show you. Oh shit, sorry.
It's okay, don't worry, Liz.
Bleeper reel.
Oh, what have you lost now?
The plot.
My glasses. Somebody's moved them.
Well, they're not going to be in there, are they? You should have gone to Specsavers. You'd have got 2 pairs for the price of 1 then. Me and Grandad.
I got 2 pairs of bifocals.
Yeah, mine are varifocals.
You can get them free as well.
Oh, Dad!
Oh, you can clear that up now. I told him to go to Specsavers.
I mean, the thing at the end, spinning across his, I need glasses.
There's a thing that our founder, Dame Mary, said, which is like, we celebrate our successes, but we don't dwell on them either. We're on a journey. And I think that's so true of our creative work. So I think it would be so easy to have done that ad and then just kind of go, okay, that was obviously, I mean, I think it was shot with like people's relatives. It's, you know, you kind of, it's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, that's all wrong. But I think if you are on a journey and you are, and you're not worried about right and wrong, and you're happy to kind of live in uncertainty, actually, the guys can see that there's a bit in that ad that actually everyone found really funny and everyone gravitated towards and everyone kind of remembered. And then the next ad that they made was this one.
$25% off for over 60s.
I just never get bored of that one.
No, it's so good. And it's like, so you don't have to be right or wrong. You can just have a try at something, and there's a bit in it that's really awful, and then there's a bit in it that's good, and then do more of that thing, do more of the thing that went well for you. And I think what that's allowed us to do is then, this is the next ad I'll show you, and the final one in this section is then coming out of COVID, actually we were able to do an ad that was actually really celebratory of that kind of moment in time, which is this one.
Oh, what? Sorry, mate.
No, Terry.
Delivery.
This says block 2. It's over there, mate.
So just keep taking what's working for you and then reinventing it for where you are in your journey at that point.
I mean, when you talked about the familiarity thing, this was out of, lockdown.
Yeah.
And delivery drivers were everything to us, weren't they? They were essential.
Exactly, and we wanted to
us.
celebrate them, but we
Yes.
wanted to do it in a way that was absolutely us.
Yes, absolutely. So you've got some great out-of-homes next, haven't you?
Yeah, I thought I'd share some out of home, really just to talk a little bit about simplicity and about not worrying about being too clever. I think sometimes we feel like we have to be really clever, and actually sometimes the most obvious and actually the most simple things are actually the smartest. So think about how the work's going to work, not how the work's going to make you feel like you've got a degree. I think there's probably a couple of things on that actually. Should have gone to Specsavers. If you think about it, all it does is it takes the category entry point, so the reason that people enter your category. So in this instance, there's something wrong with their eyes, and then it just says, well, you should go to Specsavers. It's so obvious and so simple, and actually that's the power of it. It's not something to worry about.
And it's at a tube station, so when you're waiting, you're going to read that.
Yeah, and it's taking
it's
like
well
the most
positioned.
taking the most kind of like obvious thing about eyesight, which is they're called Snellen charts. I now know. But then you can kind of keep then having fun with it. And this is something we just did in Australia, where we just misspelt the should have in different ways. And actually, there's a really geeky kind of thing about behavioral science called the generation effect, where actually if people need to work a little bit to understand something, actually it really sticks in their mind a lot more. So there's like a kind of really pleasingly kind of geeky thing about these. They're not just like done for total like flippant, but they're fun and they're simple and they're obvious.
Yeah, they are. So the next one is about
something a little bit different.
The next one's probably one of my favourite recent campaigns, actually. Does anyone want to have a guess of what this is all about? Just, yes, you do? Does anyone? Yeah? Right. Did you know about audiology and Specsavers before this?
Yeah, no one knows we do
incredible.
hearing, which is kind of
Yeah.
understandable when we're called Specsavers. So a really mad thing about hearing is that it takes people on average 10 years from when they notice a change in their hearing to them actually getting it checked out. There's such a stigma around it still. It's like tied up with, your feelings about aging and, it's kind of understandable when you think about it.
Well,
But
it's a sensitive issue.
it's really sensitive, yeah, it's
So
really
sensitive.
sensitive. And so we did loads and loads of work with people with different hearing issues. I think the key point on this is you can absolutely use humour around a topic where there is stigma, but you've got to know your audience so well.
Yeah.
And I think working in-house, and we worked with our PR agency Golin on this, by the way, I should name check them, but I think us all being so close to customers through our partners allows us to have a much more in-depth dialogue with the people who actually we're then portraying in our ads or talking to with our advertising.
Yeah.
And so this was an amazing piece of work that Golin literally just won loads of stuff at Cannes for, which was basically actually really early on in your hearing loss journey, you will start to notice sounds slightly differently and you'll start to mishear things. And actually at that point, there's not so much stigma associated with it because it actually affects lots of different people. So we created, this is the PR component to a huge campaign. We created TV advertising, loads of other stuff.
There was a lot of stuff about. This was a proper campaign. This went beyond, just an advert or an out of home. You actually really did something genuinely brilliant here with your PR agency.
Yeah, what I love about this is the Rick Astley, this bit of it was just in digital and social.
Yeah.
But there was also a load of lobbying, political lobbying stuff. There was a load of stuff with the nightlife or nighttime industries, like nightclubs and things like that, to educate and actually start to lobby for changes in the way that nightclubs play their music. It's really kind of holistic. But basically in this, what we realized is that actually when people mishear song lyrics, actually there's kind of no shame or stigma associated with that, but it starts the conversation. And so we got Rick Astley to re-record his the most misheard song, which is Never Gonna Give You Up.
Then I'm gonna give you up, then I'm gonna let you down, then I'm gonna run around with dessert spoons, then I'm gonna make you cry, then I'm gonna say goodbye, then I'm gonna tell a lie and hurt you.
There's so many elements of this campaign where you see him laughing and, the social campaign around it. I mean, this is one of those examples where your in-house team and your external team came together and made something genuinely brilliant. The familiarity, that's all there as well. Talking to the right age groups, like you were saying, talking to it, making it culturally relevant. Because everyone who's hearing this now is probably about our age and getting older with kids, having issues with their eyesight, hormonal issues, hearing issues. So this, you nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm conscious we're running slightly short on
Shall we
time.
ask?
Shall we go to questions or?
Yeah, if you would like to. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, really good. And I've noticed very recently you've used a lot of outdoors, where I've most recently seen it. The brilliant one is the van and what's the point?
I'm clicking madly.
And I thought it's roughly over the last 2.5 years. First, I wondered if it's something that you really like in terms of the media, or is it something that Specsavers have just started to notice that it's the way you can be the most playful?
We've always been big buyers of out-of-home in the UK. I think we've probably started to use it a little bit differently. So we've always used it for activation around our stores, doing loads of trading messages in it. When we did 2.5 years ago, when we did the ad I just showed you coming out of COVID, we called that Should Have Gone 2.0 or something like that, 1.1, whatever. And that was the 20th year of Should Have, and we really wanted to bring Should Have to life in a really modern way. And so actually that campaign was in gaming, in social, in out of home. We kind of really embraced, there were loads of shorts. So back to the AV point, it's not just AV for telly, it's not just 30 or whatever, 60 seconds. ads, we actually created, that guy was doing lots of different things. So there's one where he throws a parcel into the back of what he thinks is his van, and actually it's an ambulance, and a patient who's like led on the kind of gurney or whatever it's called catches it and is really surprised. And that's a really short 10-second piece of AV for social. So yeah, at that point, we kind of lent into out of home as a bit more of a brand building media than I think we had done certainly in kind of the years previously. Good spot.
This is one of my favourite as well. Does anybody else have any more questions? Sure.
You mentioned about the ads being culturally relevant. I love what you had. As you kind of grow out into the market, does the tagline still resonate with all of the international markets that you work with, or have you found that you would like to keep
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so if anyone else didn't hear, the gentleman was asking, does the line should have gone to Specsavers resonate with the other markets that we've entered? The short answer is yes. So when we launched in Australia 15 years ago, we didn't launch with should have, and we did tons of testing. So we actually just, as I said, we just launched in Canada a couple of years ago, and we just did our first should have, and this is the thing, I think one of the things about being obvious and being simple is actually not just about what you're saying, but the type of humour you're using. And I think quite often, there's a really good piece of research from 2018, which a research agency called The Nursery did, which looks, and this is just British, but it looks at the type of humour that people say they like and the type of humour that they actually like, as shown by the types of shows that they're watching. And that research showed that 49% of the British public actually prefer slapstick comedy, but only 8%, and slapstick is like Mrs. Brown Boys, and it's that kind of thing, but only 8% claim, if you ask them what type of these categories of humour do you prefer, only 8% actually say that's what they like. And I think that kind of very obvious humour seems to actually resonate broadly. So the Canada ad, I mean, this sounds really cliched even saying this, but it's actually true. The Canada ad we did, it was fishing. It was on one of the Great Lakes. It was actually not, it was on New Zealand because they were all frozen. But it was on a big lake. It was a guy fishing, and he accidentally cast his keys in rather than the fishing lure. So, we're not going to do the tower block ad in New Zealand or Canada, but that's such a simple, very universal style of humour seems in all of the markets that we're in anyway, which is kind of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Northern Europe. And the UK seem to work for us.
So you have an international tagline, that's what you're basically saying. It just works everywhere.
Yeah.
But the visual imagery, everything has to be culturally relevant.
Definitely, yeah,
that's
definitely.
really cool. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Liz. It's been brilliant speaking with you. Thank you for the fascinating talk and, telling us about Mary and Doug. I think that was quite illuminating as well. So, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.